Hey guys, Xaryu here, and today I'm going to be on the 120 PvP beta realm, kind of talking about two potential builds that I think could be okay for Arcane, and then kind of the differences, then maybe a problem I have with kind of how the builds are going to work. But first, let me kind of just jump into it. Something like this might be the first build that I think would be very, very powerful for Arcane. And I'm not only going to show you the build, but I'm going to show you the Azerite traits that I'm taking with it as well, because that's kind of the big part of the expansion, and it's kind of what I really like. But and then what I initially hinted at is kind of what I might have a slight problem with too. So I like it, but I'm a little maybe nervous too. So let's jump into it. First build here, I'll just call it the Arcane Blast build, and we are just going for big Arcane Blast. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you some gameplay from both builds, so if you guys are like, how does this maybe play, I'll actually show you that as well. But basically here in your Azerite armor, you are going with Galvanizing Spark. What Galvanizing Spark does is gives you 250 additional Arcane Blast damage and a 10% chance to generate a second charge, and you have 3 of these, which isn't crazy powerful, but it's an additional 750 damage onto your Arcane Blast every single time. But what's nice about these traits as well is they all come with a Cauterizing Blink trait in them, right? So you can kind of synergize big Arcane Blast damage with high sustain with this Cauterizing Blink. So what I think this build is going to be good for is World PvP, War Mode, 1v2s, 1v1s, so duels, maybe any type of 2v2 without a healer. So maybe Rogue Mage 2v2, anything like that. I think this build's going to be great for all of those things. And all of those things I personally love. It might not be as great in a situation like 3v3 where you have a healer. You don't quite need the Cauterizing Blink as much. And then the Galvanizing Spark kind of gets outvalued by some of the other traits. But I think in all of those things that I mentioned, this spec is going to be great. And then kind of the build I've been playing with, I was actually initially trying Rule of Threes. But Arcane Familiar gives you 10% increased mana and does some damage, so I was actually kind of interested in how it would play out, and I think I liked it actually better than Rule of Threes, because Rule of Threes didn't actually end up being that much mana reduction, instead of just having that additional 10% to maybe get you a little bit further to that next evocation, and that little bit of extra damage doesn't hurt either. Maybe it's like a 3% damage increase on top of the 10% mana. So I think I actually liked it better than Rule of Threes anyway, and it's essentially just a buff the last 60 minutes that you throw up and have that Arcane Familiar following you around. I haven't played too much of this Talon and Legion, but it seems like it might be okay with this type of build. And then Shimmer, more Shimmers, more Blinks, more heals, Incanter's Flow. Charge up here just so you can kind of get that another instant cast burst. So if you have 4 stacks, you can then throw up that Arcane Barrage. You're back down to 0 stacks, charge back up to 4, and then continue blasting, or just throw another Arcane Barrage soon after for a bunch of instant cast bursts every 40 seconds. So kind of one or the other. Kind of just gives your spec a little bit more, it's a little bit more well-rounded. And then Chrono Shift for that extra movement speed increase. You could go Ring of Frost if you're strictly playing Rogue Mage and you want to get that CC. Reverberate for recharging your stacks once again. The Touch of the Magi is just a little scary because it's going to break CC. And Nether Tempest, maybe in some 1v1 situations against a Rogue where you don't want them to re-stealth. Same thing versus a Feral, but Reverberate in Arena for regenerating those charges seems like the way to go. And then Overpowered, guys, as long as this is 60% and not nerfed, I think it's very overpowered, right? It's pretty powerful if it stays at 60%. However, what they did in Legion, rather, is they nerfed it to, I think, 45% increase, or even 30%. So they nerfed it quite a bit in PvP combat. If they do that again, I would think that Time Anomaly or Orb is going to take the value there. And then even with it not nerfed yet, one or the other both definitely have merit. Maybe not with this build, but with Arcane Orb kind of rotating through stacks a bit more, definitely okay as well. So you could really think about that. The reason Arcane Orb is so used right now is because Resonance is so powerful. Since Resonance got nerfed, it makes it you less likely to Arcane Barrage for those huge burst combos, which means if you're not cycling as much through your stacks, then you might not need to gain the stacks quite as often. That's kind of what Arcane Orb is used for. So a bunch of reasons Arcane Orb might not be as good. Also, it gave you a lot of missile procs, and you're not going to missile much anymore with this type of build. So this is the Arcane Blast build. I'll show you guys some gameplay here in a second with the Arcane Blast build at the end of the video. And you can kind of tell me how you like it. It does heavy burst with Arcane Blast. It's very fun. It reminds me of Kata Arcane Mage, actually. because it just chunks your health bar, chunks that damage. So it is a lot of fun to play. I think the weakness might be is that you actually have to cast. People can line of sight you and kick you very well. So it's going to be a spec where you fake kicks, spam out those Arcane Blasts. If they stand in the open, they're going to die. Now, the second spec, guys, is the Arcane Missile build. Now, we do have the Evocation build as well, and that's just a little bit troll, all right? A little bit troll. But the Arcane Missile build that I'm going to show you guys right here is anomalous impact. That's a hard word to say. 183 additional damage for each Arcane charge you have on your Arcane Missiles, right? So there's 4 charges. That's a little less than 800. Quick math is hard. A little less than 800 additional damage on your Arcane Missiles. That's crazy, right? Just a lot of extra damage. Kind of the downside is that you're only getting 1 cauterizing blink from the shoulders, and then you're not getting it from your chest or your helm, so you're going to have a lot less sustain, which might make it a little bit worse when you're doing something like World PvP, War Mode, 1v1s, 1v2s, double DPS 2s, etc. But you have the Arcane Missile bonus damage. So you probably guessed it, with a spec like that, you're going to change up your talents. If you're playing with those type of Azerite traits, then you're going to be going with Amplification, Arcane Empowerment. You could even do something like Time Anomaly for a little bit more consistency, maybe Supernova for a little bit more disruption. Could even go Nether Tempest for a little bit more consistency as well. And then you're looking at a build more like this, where you're just spamming out missiles, right? You're putting up a Nether Tempest, you're knocking people around with Supernova, and you're just spamming out missiles, and you're not really casting Arcane Blast much at all. And that's kind of what I want to talk about later in this video, and that's kind of why I'm nervous, right? So with a build like this, you're going with the Arcane Missile trait, so Arcane Missile build. You're going with Arcane Missiles with Amplification. When you have Clear Cast, Arcane Missiles fire an additional 1 missile. So you're like, okay, wow, I really want to cast those Arcane Missiles with the Clear Cast. But then Clear Casting also increases the damage of your Arcane Missiles by 5% per stack. So you're like, wow, that's great. And then already, here's that procking. And already with your Clear Casting, it channels 20% faster. Arcane Missiles or Arcane Explosion free and channel 20% faster. So whenever you get those Clear Casting procs, you really want a Missiles. And then even if you don't have the Clear Casting procs, since your Arcane Missiles get so much bonus damage, and you're kind of spec'd into Arcane Missiles and you're not spec'd into Arcane Blast, it's really like, okay, guys, I really want Arcane Missiles. I don't really ever want to Arcane Blast. And then I guess I'll get into it. I'm a little nervous about, guys. The thing I'm nervous about is if you're this build, it's never really worth casting Arcane Blast. You could really just unbind it, right? Because if you're ever going to cast Arcane Blast, you might as well channel a missile and just do a ton more damage because you're spec'd in the missiles, right? So like that's what I get a little nervous about, is like, there might never be a time with this build where Arcane Blast is worth it. Versus in the past, you know, sometimes it would be worth to missile, sometimes it would be worth to blast, and that's kind of the complexity of the class coming in. Now, if we go back to the other spec, we go maybe like this, you know, play a little more defensively with that Master of Escape, and then throw our armor back to my normal Arcane build that we talked about at the start of this video. Then all of a sudden, you can literally unbind missiles, right? You don't need missiles anymore because you can just spam Arcane Blast. All of your traits are geared towards Arcane Blast, and every time you would ever want to missiles, you're just taking a huge damage loss, and even if you have Clear Casting, it's not super worth it. So I guess the point of this video is there's a couple builds that I think might be interesting, and I'm excited that Azerite traits are in the game, and I'm excited that we can customize our characters, but I'm a little nervous that when you go a specific build, say Arcane Blast build, you're only going to cast Arcane Blast. It's a 1-button spec. If you cast anything else, it's a waste of time. And same thing with missiles. If you're a missile build, you're only going to cast missiles over and over and over and over and over and over, and you really won't have time for anything else. And if you do cast anything else, you're almost sad. You're like, oh, that was a waste of value. I should have just casted another missiles, right? So I hope what it doesn't do is just make every class into a 1-button spec where you're only casting what you're specialized into. So that's what I'm excited for. That's what I'm nervous about. These are the 2 Arcane specs. Let's hop into some gameplay. Alright guys, so here is a game of 3v3 RMP versus RMP, and I'm playing the first build I talked about. So the Arcane Blast build with the Cauterizing Blink. And I said it, might not be great in threes, but here is actually a threes game of it. These games are on beta, so they're pretty fast. We're not in voice. The enemy team's not in voice. Everyone's just kind of testing talents, testing specs, testing play styles, testing what's weak or what's strong. So don't expect some like crazy high, 3K MMR gameplay here, right? That's not what this is. This is more just skirmishes on the beta. We're getting a nice big opener here onto the enemy mage. Priest gets stabbed very far away, and we force the kidney shot onto the mage, and immediately mage is forced into that ice block. So here's kind of that build, guys. We started with mass invisibility, arcane power, used my dwarf racial, used that palm, double arcane blast into barrage, and the mage is dead, right? It's just so much damage, most amount of damage ever, especially if he does crits. So that's powerful, right? That's really good. We force out the pain suppression onto the mage, a couple more polymorphs onto the priest, and mage is finally free. Now we're going to go a little bit more defensive, right? They have their go still. We're on diminishing return. I'm getting CC'd. Full blind, though, comes out onto the priest. Mage is kind of standing out here in the open. Now it's our turn again. They haven't really gotten too much done during their go. The full blind comes out. Mage gets gripped, and the Arcane Blast kind of hits in. And that's what I'm talking about, guys. It's Arcane Blast damage. Like 4%, but he has that shield as well. It hits him and it just explodes 13k damage. That's just so much. For reference here, guys, I'm playing with percentages, but people have around 130,000 life, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more, depending on talents or class, but around 130,000 life. This is the damage breakdown. So the Arcane Blast spec does a lot of damage, and it seems very good, but at the same time, like, if you lock it down, it's going to do nothing. Whereas the other build might have a little bit more consistency, and I'll show you that in a second. Alright guys, so this is the Arcane Missile build, and this is just a twos match. We're throwing out some Arcane Missiles for damage, and they do a lot of damage, right? They do a lot of damage. They can channel through pillars once, if you start the channel, someone moves behind a pillar, it'll continue to Arcane Missile through the pillar, which is very nice as well. So there's definitely a lot of pros to this spec. The con is that you don't heal quite as much, and the burst doesn't quite come as hard, right? But I'm still popping my Arcane Power, my unused Trinket, and my racial, so I have a ton of damage, and look at this, just channeling missiles. They're hitting for 8,000 apiece, 9,000 apiece, 10,000 there on that last one. Can go ahead and Nova the Feral, double blink up here to the mage, continue to channel the missiles. Each missile tick was hitting for like 9 or 10,000 there at the end, and then as you see, as I'm continuing channeling these missiles, even though cooldowns 6,000 per missile, not even per Arcane Blast, but per missile that's hitting them was like 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, 6,000, and a crit would be 10,000 with no cooldowns. So as you can see, the Arcane Missile spec is insane consistent pressure, also insane burst with your cooldowns, and it can channel through pillars, so it seems really good. The damage comes in a little bit slower, as you might have noticed. It's not just like chunk, 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 done. It's like pretty much consistent. So it kind of depends on how you want to play. Depends on what spec you're playing. Depends on what comp you're playing. But I also think it's very powerful in its own way as well. So both specs are very, very interesting. I'm going to hop into one more game, though. All right, guys, this game here at the end, I think, is actually a 1v2. So we're going to try to 1v2 the Warrior and the Rogue. This one is once again with the Arcane Blast build, so you can kind of talk or look and compare how the damage comes in a little bit differently. So you just saw Arcane Missiles doing a ton of damage, right? So you might be like, wow, well, that's really powerful on how they were doing 5,000 to 10,000 per. But I guess kind of what I want to show you is how powerful this is as well. So basically, I'll show you guys everything I'm doing. Mass Invis, charged up, Arcane Power, Dwarf Racial with my Trinket. All right, so we have all of these things stacked. Now we're gonna cast Arcane Blast, Palm, Arcane Blast, Arcane Blast, Arcane Barrage. He's 4% life, pops Retail and Rally, so he's 16% life, but he's gonna go back down here in a second. Stun hits me, try to pre-tempt because I think the Rogue's gonna open on me any second. Go in for another Arcane Blast and he dies. So like, the burst is so high with a build like this. Now that I'm blinking around, I can really heal back up. Look at these big heals. I was at 85% a second ago, and now I'm healing back up. And that's kind of what gives this build some sustain, some 1v1 pressure, and things like that. So I don't know if this would be possible if I was playing the Missile build. With the Missile build right now, it'd be under 50% life for sure, just based on me being healed blessed through that blink trait. Now this Rogue is going to kind of turtle down a little bit, so we're just going to go ahead and eat back in stealth, or not in stealth, but while he's in stealth, I'm going to go ahead and eat. And I have this block here if I want to go ahead and throw out that ice block. I'm trying to poly the Rogue, try to just reset, fake any kicks. It's actually kind of difficult to fake kicks without that Omni Bar. Rogue gets sheeped up here. I don't know if he trinkets. He does decide to trinket. I pour it back, but that Death from Above actually followed me during that. So this is a little scary, but keep that slow on the rogue. And I have a lot of blink heals, as I've been mentioning quite a bit. So I'm at 34% life, 36% life, 38% life, 40% life, 42% life. So it just keeps pumping up and up and up and up. And that's what makes this build decent in 1v1. Still maybe not the best 1v1 class in the game. If this guy was really, really talented or skilled on rogue, he could probably still kind of just turtle and reset and probably take it out. But you can do a lot better with a build like this. Especially in 1v1s or world PvP, because you have that sustain as the mage. But here's my damage once again. Pop in the Arcane Blast, the Arcane Power, the Presence of Mind, the Instant Blast. Throw out the missiles because he's running around the pillar. So this kind of counteracts what I was saying at the beginning of the video on when there's never a chance to cast missiles with this build. If they're running behind a pillar and you want to channel through the pillar, you can still cast missiles, right? So I guess there's some use cases for missiles. And after playing the missile build, I don't know if there's any use for Arcane Blast besides literally if you have palm up, but you still get my point. It still feels really bad to cast what you're not spec'd into, but you cast the missiles there, rogue's running away, and we eventually take them out, I think. Yep, there it is. So there's that 1v2. My rogue was just sitting and still did 0 damage. So guys, both specs are good. Both specs are kind of fun to play and kind of fun to build, because you're like, oh, this synergizes with this and this synergizes with this. I'm gonna do so much damage in this way. So I actually like it. I'm really excited for it. But my one concern is that it might make classes a little bit too one-dimensional, based around if you have all of those armor traits for just that one talent or that one spec. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. If you did not enjoy the video, make sure to give it a big thumbs down. Talk to me down below in the comments on which spec you guys thought was better, or that you guys would enjoy more, or that you guys would want to play yourselves. Did you like the Arcane Blast build or the Arcane Missile build, where you just, spamming those Arcane Blasts for the big one-shots, or the missiles for those insane consistent pressure? Let me know down below in the comments. I'm actually curious on which spec you guys like better. Guys, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next upload. Peace.